Let's look at number 6A in your learning guide. This is on page 11. And we're now multiplying fractions. So as we multiply fractions, it does not matter what the denominators are. They don't have to be the same like you would in addition or subtraction. You do want to look though to see if you have any common factors that could be canceled out. In this case we do not, so we're going to multiply straight across the top and the bottom. Now the negative that's in front of this fraction, why don't you move that up to the front? We know that in a fraction, if I have the opposite of A over B, that's the exact same value as the opposite of A over B, or A over the opposite of B. So I can commit that negative sign to either the numerator or the denominator. So let's make that negative 1 over 10 times 7/12. Multiply across the top, I'd have negative 7. Multiply across the bottom, over 120. There are no common factors between the numerator and denominator, so that is my answer. Okay, moving on to 6B. To divide fractions, I multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So I'm going to again move the negative sign to the numerator, negative 7/8, times the reciprocal of the second fraction. Means I'm going to flip the fraction. Before we multiply, look to see if you can cancel out any common factors. And it looks like I have an 8 in the numerator, a factor of 8, an 8 in the denominator, a factor of 8 in the numerator, which leaves me with a 2 in the numerator. So if I multiply across the top, I would have negative 14, and multiply across the bottom, I would have 15. Number 7A, I'm going to add fractions. These are unlike denominators, so we want to make sure to find a least common denominator. The least common denominator between 2 and 5 would be 10. So let's change 1/2 to tenths. The way I'll do that is 2 needs to multiply by 5 to get 10. So if I multiply 1 by 5, I would get 5/10. Do the same thing with 1/5. If I make 1/5 into a fraction whose denominator is 10, I need to multiply by 2 in the numerator and denominator, which gives me 2/10. So 5/10 plus 2/10 would equal 7/10. Number 7B, we're going to do the same thing, but in this case we're going to subtract. So as I subtract here, the least common denominator is going to be 12. So if I make both of those fractions equal to 12ths, 4/3, I would need to multiply the numerator and denominator by 4, which is 16/12. And for the 3/4, I need to multiply the numerator and denominator by 3, which is 9/12. So as we subtract, the denominator will stay the same. It'll be in 12ths. 16 minus 9 gives me 7. Okay. Then number 8, we need to work the parentheses first. So I need to find a least common denominator. Here that common denominator would be 6. So let's change 1/2 to 6. I do so by multiplying numerator and denominator by 3. So we get 3/6. 1/3 is equal to how many 6? You'd multiply by 2 and get 2/6. And we're going to divide that by 5/8. 3/6 minus 2/6 is 1/6. Now we'll be dividing by 5/8. To divide fractions, remember we multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by 8/5. Before I multiply, let's go ahead and cancel out a common factor of 2, which would leave me with 3 and 4. 1 times 4 is 4. 3 times 5 is 15. We're going to omit number 9. On number 10, I have a board that's 7.5 inches long is cut from a board that begins at 2 feet long. The width of the saw is 1/16 of an inch. What's the length of the remaining piece? So we're going to start out with the 2 foot long board, but we know that 2 feet is the same thing as 24 inches. So if we start with 24 inches, we're cutting off of that board 7.5 inches, then let's change them both to improper fractions. 24/1 minus 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15/2. So to combine those, I would need them both to have a least common denominator of 2. 24/1 is equal to 48/2. So 48/2 minus 15/2 would give me 33 halves. And then the last part of the problem says we're going to cut off, the saw cut is 1/16 of an inch, so that part is also going to go away from the total. So we're going to subtract, 33 halves minus 1/16. Let's change both of these to 16ths, which means that the 33 halves, if I change that to 16ths, I need to multiply by 8. So if I multiply by 8, 33 times 8, and you can do that in your calculator, is 264. So I've got the 264 16ths minus 1/16 is 263 16ths. We're going to change this to a mixed number. This would be correct if we were only looking at an improper fraction for the answer, but let's divide that. If I take the 263 divided by 16, 16 goes into 26 one time. 1 times 16 is 16. We subtract, I would have 10, bring down the 3. 16 will go into 103 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. So that would be 6 plus 3 is 9. And that would leave me with 7. So I would have a remainder of 7/16. So the mixed number form of what would be left, remember this was in inches, is 16 and 7/16 inches.